Hello, ARMY! Welcome back to BTS News Today channel. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the smallest moment can create the biggest storm? During a calm and seemingly normal GQ interview with BTS, most viewers were focused on the questions, the laughter, and the effortless charm of the members. Nothing looked unusual. Nothing looked controversial. But ARMY sees everything. Hidden inside that interview was a moment so brief that many people missed it the first time, just 3 seconds. A single glance between Kim Taehyung and Jungkook. 3 seconds that suddenly had millions of fans rewinding the video again and again. What exactly happened in that look? Why did it feel so intense, so different compared to every other moment in the interview? At first, people thought it was nothing. Just another casual interaction between two members who have spent years together. But then ARMY started slowing the footage down frame by frame. The internet exploded with theories. Edits went viral. Screenshots spread across social media. Discussions turned into debates. And before anyone realized it, that tiny 3-second moment had turned into one of the most talked about scenes from the entire interview. Suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Did Taehyung and Jungkook just reveal something without saying a single word? The speculation grew louder. The clips kept spreading until the moment finally came when both of them could no longer ignore it. That's when Taehyung and Jungkook decided to break their silence about the 3-second act ARMY simply refused to forget. For a while, it seemed like the storm would fade away, but it didn't. The clip kept spreading across the internet like wildfire. Every repost added another layer of speculation. Every slowed-down version revealed details fans were convinced they hadn't noticed before. The 3 seconds became a puzzle, and ARMY loves puzzles. Now, in the endlessly replayed GQ interview, the moment arrives quietly. Kim Taehyung turns his head slightly. Jungkook looks up at almost the exact same time. Their eyes meet. For a brief moment, the room feels different. No one in the interview reacts. The host keeps talking. The cameras keep rolling. The conversation flows forward as if nothing unusual happened. But to millions watching later, it didn't look ordinary at all. Fans slowed the clip to half speed, then quarter speed, then frame by frame. Someone posted a freeze frame showing the exact second their eyes locked. Another account zoomed in on Taehyung's expression. Another pointed out the subtle change in Jungkook's posture. The theories multiplied overnight. Some said the look was playful. Others insisted it was protective. A few claimed it was a silent message only they understood after years of performing together. The deeper fans analyzed it, the more mysterious it seemed. Soon, comment sections were flooded with the same sentence. Did anyone else catch that? What made it even more intriguing was the timing. The moment came during a part of the interview that had nothing to do with either of them. No question was directed at them. No joke had just been made. Yet somehow, in those 3 seconds, something shifted. Even casual viewers began noticing it. Clips circulated with dramatic captions. Edits added slow music and pauses. Some videos reached millions of views within hours. The internet had turned a tiny glance into a full-blown mystery. And strangely, neither Taehyung nor Jungkook said anything about it, not at first. Days passed, then weeks. The silence only made people more curious. Fans began digging into older interviews, performances, and behind-the-scenes clips. Suddenly, every shared glance between them in the past was being re-examined. The narrative grew louder until it became impossible to ignore. During a later conversation with fans, the topic surfaced again. Someone mentioned the infamous 3-second moment. Jungkook reportedly laughed softly. Not loudly, but in a way that suggested he knew how something simple had become something enormous. Taehyung's reaction was quieter. He leaned back slightly, shaking his head, as if he already knew exactly which moment people meant, because by then everyone did. Jungkook spoke first. He explained that the moment wasn't a hidden signal or a secret message. According to him, it was simple. They just made eye contact, something they had done thousands of times over the years. But the internet had already created its own story. Taehyung seemed to understand that better than anyone. When he addressed it, his explanation was calm and honest. He admitted that fans sometimes notice the smallest details, things the members themselves forget seconds later. To them, It was just a normal moment between two people who had shared stages, studios, and memories for over a decade. But to fans, it felt meaningful. Maybe that's why the clip spread so quickly, because meaning doesn't always come from what actually happened, but from what people believe they saw. Even after the clarification, the debate didn't disappear. Some fans accepted the explanation. Others kept replaying the clip, convinced there was still something deeper hidden in those 3 seconds. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this. Even now, if you watch the GQ interview again, knowing everything that followed, the moment still feels powerful. It's just a glance, just 3 seconds, yet it captured the attention of millions around the world. Whether it meant something or nothing at all, one thing is certain. That tiny moment will continue to be replayed, analyzed, and debated for a long time. Because sometimes, the internet doesn't let moments disappear. It turns them into legends. But the story didn't end there. After Taehyung and Jungkook addressed the moment, many expected the discussion to fade. Instead, something different happened. Fans began watching the clip again, not to prove theories, but to understand something else. They started noticing what happened immediately after. For years, people focused only on the eye contact. But now, they looked at the seconds before and after. A new question emerged. Why did Jungkook look away so quickly? The moment was brief, but his reaction seemed even faster. As soon as their eyes met, his gaze dropped, almost like he suddenly became aware of the camera. Meanwhile, Taehyung held the gaze just a fraction longer. Not dramatically, just enough to feel different when replayed. This observation spread quickly. The internet had found a second layer. This time, the discussion was quieter and more analytical. Fans compared the clip with older moments. They realized this kind of interaction wasn't rare. It happened often. The difference was simple. This time, millions were watching closely. Meanwhile, Taehyung and Jungkook didn't continue the discussion publicly. Their brief clarification remained their only response. But that silence didn't stop fans from noticing new patterns in later appearances. During one live broadcast, fans noticed another subtle interaction. Nothing dramatic, just a small moment. A question was directed at another member. Cameras moved. Taehyung paused slightly, barely noticeable, but enough. Jungkook noticed. Their eyes met again. This time, there was no hiding the tension. Taehyung's gaze carried a question. Why now? Jungkook didn't respond with words, but something in his expression shifted. Something raw, maybe regret, maybe something deeper. They were pulled apart by choreography, but the tension remained. Taehyung tried to steady himself, returning to the version of himself the world expected, but his focus kept drifting back. Jungkook, too, seemed distracted. When they stood side by side again, Taehyung whispered softly, "Why would you say that now?" Jungkook replied quietly, "Because you wouldn't listen if I didn't." The words hit harder than expected. "Do you think this is the right time?" Taehyung asked. "No," Jungkook answered, "but it's the only time you can't run away." Silence followed, sharp and heavy. The performance continued, but something had changed. It wasn't just emotion anymore. It was truth, unspoken yet impossible to ignore. Even as they performed flawlessly, something real lingered beneath every movement. And when the music ended, they stood side by side, but not the same. Because now, the silence between them carried more than emotion. It carried truth. The applause crashed over them like a wave, loud enough to drown anything unfinished, but not strong enough to erase it. Taehyung stood still for a fraction too long after the final pose, his chest rising and falling like he had just run through something far heavier than a performance. Jungkook turned slightly toward him, subtle and careful, as if even the smallest movement now carried weight. Up close, there was no stage illusion left, only a distance that didn't make sense anymore. Taehyung finally exhaled, slow and unsteady. His gaze fixed somewhere ahead, but unfocused, like he wasn't really seeing the crowd at all. He was still inside that moment, still replaying those words. Jungkook stepped closer again, closing that invisible gap that had been stretching all night. Not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate. Taehyung noticed immediately. His fingers twitched slightly at his side, a small reaction, but enough to reveal everything he wasn't saying. "You're still doing it," Jungkook murmured, his voice barely audible under the fading noise of the crowd. Taehyung's eyes shifted just slightly, a quiet warning. "Doing what?" "Pretending you don't care." The words landed softer this time, but deeper. Taehyung didn't respond right away. For a moment, it looked like he might ignore it completely, like he might slip back into that familiar silence. But something in his expression changed. Not anger, not denial. Something more fragile. "You don't get to decide what I feel," Taehyung said quietly, his voice controlled, but not steady. Jungkook didn't look away. "Then show me I'm wrong." That hit harder than anything before. For a brief second, Taehyung's composure cracked. Not visibly to everyone, but enough. Enough for Jungkook to see it. Enough for the moment to shift again. The staff began moving around them. The cameras were still rolling. Members started interacting with fans, waving, smiling, stepping back into their roles like nothing had happened. But between them, something had already changed. Taehyung turned slightly, finally facing Jungkook, not fully, not openly, but enough to close the distance just a little more. "This isn't the place," he said under his breath. Jungkook nodded once. Not arguing, not pushing further, but not backing down either. "I know," he replied. "That's the problem." Another silence settled between them, but this one felt different. Less sharp, more heavy, like something waiting. The moment broke when another member called out to them. The illusion returned instantly. Smiles, waves, perfect timing, perfect coordination. To everyone watching, nothing was wrong. Nothing had changed. But for those who had been paying attention, something had. And maybe that's what makes moments like this so powerful. Not what is said, but what almost is. Because the truth is, the internet never really moved on from that original 3-second glance. It just evolved. What started as curiosity became analysis. What started as a theory became a narrative. And what started as a single moment became something much bigger than anyone expected. Fans weren't just watching anymore, they were searching, looking for patterns, looking for meaning, looking for anything that could explain why that moment felt different. And maybe the answer was never meant to be clear, because sometimes the most real moments are the ones that aren't explained. The ones that happen in between words, in between movements, in between everything that's meant to be seen. And that's exactly what made that 3-second glance impossible to forget. Even now, people still go back to that interview. They replay it. They slow it down. They watch the seconds before and the seconds after. Not because they expect a different answer, but because the feeling is still there. Unchanged. Unresolved. And maybe that's the reason it never faded. Because in a world where everything is constantly explained, defined, and clarified, that moment stayed uncertain. And sometimes, uncertainty is what keeps a story alive. So, the next time you watch that GQ interview, pay attention not just to the glance, but to everything around it. The silence, the timing, the way it lingers just a second longer than it should. Because maybe, just maybe, it was never just 3 seconds,